Well, good afternoon. Time to check in on those markets. But before we got to that, we had SA retailer Massmart reporting an interim loss. However, the news that's caught the market's attention is that its majority owner, Walmart, has offered to buy the remaining shares of Massmart, 62 Rand for each outstanding share. Currently, the share price up 41%. But to give us more perspective when it comes to the interim period that was, we are joined by CEO of Massmart, Mitchell Sleip. Mitchell, thank you so much for your time. In an environment that is characterized by supply chain challenges, high interest rates, flooding in April, I mean, how would you characterize the interim period that was for the group?
Well, thank you, Nastasia, for having me on, first of all. It is a tough retail environment. Consumers, there is no question, are under strain. Inflation is certainly causing customers to prioritize purchases of essential items. In the case of Massmart, we're primarily a general merchandise business. And so we have really been fighting to serve customers effectively. But it's a tough environment. And, what we've seen is strained sales, particularly on the general merchandise side. Food and liquor sales have been relatively strong, but we've also seen a lot of margin compression as well, as our mix shifts more towards food and liquor, that type of thing, and away from general merchandise. So tough environment. Obviously, we would have liked to have seen better results, but it's probably best described as a reflection of the tough kind of economic environment that we're working in right now.
On that note, then, in that tough retail environment where you're seeing pressure on consumers, what aspects of those levers within Massmart are within your control right now?
Sure. This is a time that requires us to be really focused and good retailers. And so, the short answer is there's a lot that's in our control. What we've done is we've continued to focus in on the turnaround plan, which we've been driving for the last couple of years. And in fact, in the first half, we've seen great progress in a number of key turnaround plan pillars. So I might zero in on the game business, for example. We've been remodeling and relaying stores. And in fact, in June of this year, we finished the complete relay and remodel of all of our South African stores. And we relaunched the game business on July 1 in what we called Halfway Day. So we're going for the opportunities that are out there and the sales that are out there while we continue to recuperate the game business and get it to health. On top of that, what we're seeing is also a shift in consumer behavior. So the builders business, for example, which ran 2 record years in a row, is off of those sort of heady numbers that we had seen previously, largely because behavior shifted away from home improvement. And then we're also seeing the HoReCa business, which is hotels, restaurants, and catering, come back and give us some strength in wholesale. So it's a very mixed picture, but really proud of our continued focus on the turnaround plan.
I'm going to throw in the deep end here and ask, what would you say has been the trickiest part of this turnaround plan?
So probably the trickiest part, interestingly enough, has been trying to answer this question about Walmart's ongoing commitment to the market, which hopefully the announcement that we've seen today has been put to bed for good. But I'd say above and beyond that, the most challenging part, it's always difficult to turn around a business. But I think that the circumstances that we've been in over the last few years with COVID, with the unrest that we saw last year in KZN and Gauteng, the flooding, and then the economic conditions have been tough. And remember, Massmart was probably the most impacted retailer in the unrest last year, losing 2 distribution centers, over 40 of our stores. And so a lot of those elements make a turnaround even more difficult.
Still going to be, around the business before you hand over to new CEO Jonathan Malapo. What are you seeing as the impact of your e-commerce strategy? What are you seeing on that front?
So first of all, let me congratulate Jonathan on his being named as our incoming CEO effective as of January 1. He's a tremendously talented leader, and I know is going to be able to take Massmart to new highs. He's been engaged with me in looking at the e-commerce business, and in fact, what we've seen as we continue to invest is that Massmart is building strength. We grew our gross merchandise value by 108% in the first half. That's the combination of both 1P or our sales combined with third-party sales. And we're seeing just tremendous growth as we continue to launch new platforms. That being said, there's a lot of investment that's still required in order for us to truly fulfill our long-term e-commerce ambitions.
Mitchell, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That is CEO of Massmart, Mitchell Slape. However, turning to the earnings side, in terms of what we've seen locally, we've had the likes of Sun International and Advertech release their figures today. However, broadly, when we look at what's happening from a markets perspective, we did see Asian markets lower, and this is on the back of Fed Chair Jerome Powell's comments saying that he is worried, that rising interest rates will cause some pain to the U.S. economy. Also warning that higher interest rates will have to persist for some time. So as a result, when we look at the indices, there, Nikkei down 2.6%, Hang Seng Index also in negative territory, and we also saw that negative theme flow through the European markets. Rand was a little bit weaker as well, as we're starting to see that dollar continuing to rise. Currently 16.92. To give us some perspective when it comes to the markets, I'm joined in studio here at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange by Gary Boyson, who is a portfolio manager at Rand Swiss. Gary, thank you so much for your time. So lots happening. Massmart probably been the biggest story, looking at the rise in that share price. But overall, before we get to Massmart, how's our local JSE holding up?
So the local JSE is definitely on the back foot. I think if you're not holding Massmart today, you're feeling a little bit of pain. But looking at it, it's being driven mainly by the resource sector. We've got some of the gold counters down well over 5%. So Goldfields, Anglo Gold falling. As you said, that's just the rising dollar, I think, taking the shine off them a little bit. We had after that Jerome Powell speech at Jackson Hole on Friday, we had US markets in fairly negatively. I think they were down around 3.4% on the S&P 500. China followed suit this morning. So there's no question, we're definitely on the back foot. The currency is holding up reasonably well, all things considered. So Rand dollar is still hovering just below that 17 level, even though the dollar index is now at record highs at about I think it's almost 109 at the moment.
So the Massmart story is quite interesting, especially when you look at when the news came out. I think when the markets opened, was up 46%. It's now up 41%. And I mean, what did you make? The earnings were terrible, but I think the market is focusing on the fact that shareholders might at least be able to walk away with some value, given the fact that the CEO is saying a lot more financial commitment is going to be needed to turn this business around.
No, there's no question. I think they want minorities to accept this deal, and if they're offering 62 Rand per share, I think at the moment ruling price around 57. That's not pricing in much risk for the deal not going through. Now we know that Walmart will be a very, very serious buyer. But there are still hurdles that need to be crossed, competition hurdles, and obviously it does represent a very I suppose sizable foreign investment into South Africa, but it takes it out of the public space. So it takes it out of the scrutiny of people. We probably won't be covering Massmart on shows like this. Obviously the intention is to delist from the JSE as well, and what that means is in the private space they can probably get away with a little bit more than they can when they have the public scrutiny. So does it mean job cuts? Is it going to mean shutting stores and focusing on their e-commerce strategy? Because we know Amazon is coming in, and I think Walmart wants to be a reasonable competitor. But what does that mean for the people that are working in the jobs that are at Massmart at the moment? So I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think the pricing is quite there yet. I think it was a little bit of a surprise. So we've obviously got the carry cost that we've got to factor in, plus the risk that there is some sort of issue with the deal, and that the deal gets blocked. So maybe a little bit aggressive, maybe everyone getting a little bit too excited this morning, and just moderating a little bit to try and price in that risk factor.
So we also had Advotech and Sun International. Which of the two caught your attention?
We can chat about both. Both very, very strong set of numbers out of both groups. So we'll start with Sun International. Paying a dividend for the first time in 6 years. They did manage to reduce their debt, by about 500 million, and that obviously, just that stronger financial position, making them comfortable enough to pay some money back to shareholders. They also, I suppose, pursuing an online strategy through Sunbet, and we're seeing very, very decent growth in the online sports betting strategy. We're seeing a big lift in their gaming win as well. So people heading back into casinos and that benefiting the group. And obviously I suppose the return to the more traditional hotels and sites is also assisting the group with COVID restrictions being lifted.
So let's take things globally. I mean, you look at the comments coming out of Jackson Hole symposium, and then you look at what's happening on the European side with, some of the economic figures coming through there. Everyone's talking about, is there potential of, euro dollar falling further below parity? And we haven't spoken about euro dollar parity in quite a while. What do you make of things?
We're hovering pretty much at parity. So $1 is almost €1. I think the view at the moment, or our view certainly, is that you're probably going to see more euro weakness. So while we did get, as I mentioned, that very, very hawkish speech out of Jerome Powell, which has just shored up the fact that we are going to see more interest rate hikes coming out of the Fed, which is very, very positive for the US dollar. Federal funds futures are pricing in another 75 basis points in September. So we're going to see more tightening in the US. But on the other hand, we're seeing Europe in a very difficult position now, just with the energy crisis that they're going into. So we're moving into winter, obviously, and there's some key factors that are going to, I think, put a lot of pressure on Europe. So one, does Russia cut off energy supplies totally? If that happens, remember, European winters are very, very cold. You can't survive just under a blanket in Europe. You have to have heating, you have to have that natural gas, you have to have some way of warming yourself, and that means that Europe is going to have to pay up for energy, and they're going to have to import it. And that, I think, it's putting it in a very, very difficult position. So seeing some euro weakness now is very, very, I think, sensible. Some of it has already been priced in with that big slide we've seen in the euro. But in trading, they say the trend is your friend. At the moment, it's clearly in favor of the dollar and against the euro.
Okay, Friday we've got non-farm payrolls. What's the market expectation?
Market definitely for weaker. So if you look at the actual unemployment figure, we're not expecting major moves there. At some point, it has to move though. So we're sitting at 3.5% in the US on the unemployment figure. Now that, if you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have said that was below frictional unemployment. That wasn't a reasonable unemployment figure. Back then we used to think of it at about 4.5% as frictional unemployment. But we are expecting that to stay in line at some point in the future. That given the aggressive interest rate hikes, that has to weaken, but not this time around. But just in the headline number, we are expecting around 250,000 new claims. But that number is going to move a fair amount, I think, into the Friday release.
With just under a minute left to our discussion, SA results season so far, has it met your expectations?
Yeah, I think it's exceeded expectations. I think, given the operational challenges that so many of these companies are facing in terms of load shedding, in terms of the civil unrest, in terms of, the climate, the flooding that we saw in KZN as well, I think it's been a very, very difficult operating period. But so many companies coming out and just showing the resilience, I think, of some South African businesses and South African entrepreneurs, and how they can make things work even in the most difficult of circumstances.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That is Gary Boyson, who is from Rand Swiss. That is it from me. We're going to take a quick break. We'll have more news after this, and of course at the top of the hour we'll have that CEO interview with Andrew Leeming, the CEO of Sun International, giving us his perspective on that company's earnings. That is it for me. Goodbye.